Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Finale, and this is Real Estate Talk, TGIF. We are an hour earlier than usual, but we are in great shape. We are in great spirits. We're here to have a lot of fun and to learn a little bit. This is episode 353, which is 349 weeks in a row. And we're going to keep going until we don't. And today, really special guest today. I mean, if you want to learn how to convert leads, if you want to learn, and not only just how to talk on the phone, but actually know how to convert, you're in for a treat today. We have Nikki Pais, who is, Nikki is a conversion coach at Digital Maverick, also has her own things that we're going to talk about. And I'll give you a little bit more on Nikki in a second. But first, thank you for coming, Nikki. Let's go to the videotape. Real estate agents want to acquire clients consistently to grow their business and income for that great lifestyle. This broadcast brings you the best people in the industry to support that quest. This is Dave Finale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and Align, your premier real estate solution. And we're back. Thank you, everybody, for watching that. Good morning, everybody. We have Nikki Pais today. Nikki is conversion coach at Digital Maverick. Nikki Pais knows that great real estate sales start with the right conversations and the right systems to back them up. She's a conversion coach. She helps agents improve follow-ups. As a conversion expert, she specializes in CRM training, database auditing, and sales coaching, prioritizing types of leads by talking to the ones talking to you is the most important. Nikki delivers practical strategies and drives results for 80 teams across the United States and Canada. And let me tell you something, this is the badass of conversion, in my opinion. Nikki, welcome to our broadcast today.
Thank you for having me, Dave. That's so sweet of you. The introduction was lovely.
Yeah. So here we are. We are broadcasting this on March 7th, 2025. And, you know, we're two months into the year of 2025. And there's not a lot of shifting in the market. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of discontent by everybody involved. And it has a lot to do with real estate agents. And, you know, there's not a lot of for sale by owners out there. There's expireds out there. And, you know, for you to expire now, for me, there's only one thing that's wrong, and that is your price. But you know what, before we really get into our conversion, I want to know more about you, Nikki, where you started, where you came from, what your journey has been to be where you're at today.
So when I first started as a young Nikki, I was living in a house that my grandparents owned. They had it vacant and said, Nikki, just make this move to San Antonio. You can stay in the house for a little bit. And I got a job with a real estate broker. He had a team of two, and it was me, one assistant, and him. And so we did all of his transactions, his contracts, his marketing, talking to his leads, filtering through his emails. And from there, I realized that the lead generation and talking to the leads part was the area that I most enjoyed. And so after that experience, I remember I had gone to him for like $1 raise, and the answer was no. And so I cold called 10 different places. And I said, hey, these are my skills. Is there any chance that anybody in your office would benefit from something like that? 3 of them offered interviews, and all 3 of them offered me a position. And from there, that one propelled me. And then the rest is history. That first year I did over 100 closings. And those of you who have somebody who does inside sales, lead generation, typically in your first year, it's healthy to expect, you know, anywhere from 20 to 40. 40 would be really excelling. But I spent all of my time just on the phone, and that's why I'm where I am now. It's just practice.
So here's one of the things, Nikki, and that's really cool. You're able to actually convert your next job on the phone, which is really great, right? So, but here's the thing, right? So most people get into this business, and they get this piece of paper from the state that they're in, and it says salesperson on it. And what I've always said to people is what happens, there's like this psychological transfer of common sense that happens when they get their license, because now they want to talk like a salesperson. It just doesn't make sense to me. And their pitch is off. And You may know as well as I do, a lot of people talk with an upswing and a lot of different things that kind of drive me a little crazy. And I've had to tone that down myself as time goes on. Talk to me about how you started, and was that an issue for you, or was it just this is how it is?
Yeah, I remember my CEO at the time said, I feel so sorry for you listening to you on the phone, because everybody who I talked to, I was so nervous. I would accidentally say the wrong words and my upswings were out of control. And I remember that at one point, I worked with a lady named Jean Schmidt, and she changed the way that I looked at things. And one of the conversations we had was that if somebody invited you to do something, and let's say, Dave, that you and I were talking, and I say that I have a trip, and then you say, hey, I really want to go. If I say, oh, okay, that means I had no plans of inviting you in the first place, right? But if you're my friend, I want you to come with me, then I say, yes, oh, you have to come. And we naturally go down when we mean it. And I realized that the truth about salespeople is we're not sure in what we're saying. That's the reason that we upswing. And we do it in two areas. We do it in price and we do it in appointment. Those are the two areas that we feel the most nervous, and it shows. The more nerves you have, the more likely you are to continue those upswings. But I had to train myself. I literally would practice saying a sentence over and over and always ending with a down. But I had to retrain myself entirely.
Okay, so we know that people will do this all the time, and I always said to my daughters are millennials, and that's how they always spoke. And I always try to say, guys, that's really annoying, right? But anyway, but you know what I'm talking about, right? So, but when you're talking to people about that and you're nervous, do they feel it, or is it just what you're saying? You don't sound confident. Do they feel your nerves, your fear, your lack of confidence?
I will tell you this much. Once I started matching people's energy on the phone, the amount of people I was able to keep on the phone over 2 minutes changed. So it isn't to say inherently that every single person feels what you're feeling. Not always, right?
Right.
But that energy matching comes when you start to pay attention to the harmony in your voice. If the person is staying very steady, I'm staying steady. But if somebody is talking soft, or if somebody is talking really quickly, then our ability to mirror, then that's where the conversation gets longer. So I think that's the next step. We start on, can I be purposeful and intentional in my voice swings? And when I can control that, can I start to do it in the way that the lead does as well?
Okay, so there's 2 points you made a minute ago and just a second ago, but I want to hit them both and I don't want to forget them. So what was a word you used that begins with a P? Let's see, what was that word? Practice, right? Practice is a very important part. And I just had, like I said, before this broadcast, I had one of my calls is called Schedule and Prep, where I help agents put their schedule together without anxiety. That's one of the things that I do really well. And because we always have anxiety about our schedule. And this is a new agent that I just started working with. And she's in that disease of getting ready to get ready. And I said, look, it's really important for who you're going to talk to, for you to be ready to talk to them. So when are you coming into the office so we can actually go through what you're going to say, so you're not hitting it totally cold, even though you know these people. So the practice part is important. And I said earlier, practice is so important, and it's important for me as I want to put forward that I'm entertaining and going after 2 new projects, two completely different niches for me, because I need to learn more. I always want to learn more, and the practice is the part that is going to make it easy for me. And it might be one word that the other person says. It might be one person that says, you sucked. You should have said it that. You should have said this. Now, that's the extreme, of course, but practice is important. Is there a long question? Sorry about this. Is there a sweet spot for practice? Is it time? Is it script? Is it dialogue? What is the place of practice, and when should we do it?
In order of importance, it is the frequency that you practice that makes a difference, right? It's the same thing with working out. We don't go to the gym one time for 4 hours and get the results that we want. If you break it up over and over and over and over again, and it totals 4 hours, you're more likely to get better results because it's that strength training. So the truth is, the first time is frequency. I call my mom every morning on the way to work and say, Mom, I'm going to try to close you. And I would practice the appointment part over and over until eventually my mom, who is the you suck if it's not going well type, she told me, and she was like, that worked. That worked. That was great. And so one is how often. The second thing, I love words. The balloons agree with me. I love words. But the thing about words is that we don't inherently remember word for word what was said, but we 100% remember how we felt in the conversation, which is why I understand now it is the way we say the thing, but that's much harder to teach. That is 100% a practice method. And if you think about things, I heard somebody say it's like a piano. There's 88 keys on the piano. And when you have everything at your disposal, our history tells us which part of the piano that we're willing to use. And for so many of us, the willingness is smaller and smaller. We say, I'm only comfortable on this side of the piano because that's how my parents talked. That's how my friends and I talk. But the more that you can play with your voice and use all of the keys, the more likely you are to make an impact with more people. And so what I would say after your harmony, once you practice the voice, then we can hone in on the words. Of course, the words matter, but never as much as how you say it. Because I can say, how are you? But if I say, how are you? There's a difference. The energy that we portray is totally different.
I completely agree with you. It's energy, it's frequency of practice, et cetera, what energy you put into it. You just can't go into it with having a monotone and going through the motions. And a lot of people, rather than practice, it's like, it's like they call doctors that they have a practice, right? I don't know why they call it that, because I figured they should do it for real sooner or later. That's just a stupid joke. Anyway, but the point I'm making is really simple. I mean, you're not going to hire a doctor that says, you say, well, can you do this surgery? She says, yeah, I think I'll do it. I think it'll work. I think I'll be able to go through it, everything. You're not hiring that guy. But if he says, yes, I can, and the procedure is going to look like this, let me know if you have any questions. He goes through the process of asking you questions. Because let's face it, when you go into a doctor's office, that's a script too. Like what the physician's assistant asks you before you get in, or a nurse asks you the questions, how you feeling, or your blood pressure, all that stuff. That's a script too. And they just do it so well that you think you're being cared for. It's the same thing in talking to a for sale by owner, whoever you're talking to build the relationship, right? And that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, what you just said there with the doctor thing is such a good explanation, because even doctors who their knowledge and register for what they're trying to explain can easily go over our heads. And let's be very honest, we've all had somebody who had more knowledge, but we felt more comfortable with somebody who talked in our register. And if the doctor can explain it to us in a way where we can receive it, well, we're more likely to trust that doctor, even if the other person had a higher register. And that's where some agents end up losing the race, because they've gotten so experienced in the knowledge and how to that they've lost the willingness to stay fresh in the rapport building and to stay fresh in connection. Well, the knowledge does not outweigh the person who's able to connect.
Absolutely. Staying fresh in the rapport building. That is so important in every walk of life. And I can tell you that, I've had some things done over the past couple of months and had to see doctors. And there was one doctor in particular that was horrible. I mean, rapport building, all he did was basically minimize everything I said. And I didn't want to talk to this guy. I kind of wanted to hit him, but I didn't, of course. I mean, but the point I'm making is, if you're going in like you're the know-it-all, that's not going to happen, right? And the other thing is with our conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong, we always want to go out of our way to make them right, and we need to give up the feeling that we need to be right. And when we do that, we make them feel important. Is that right?
Yeah. One of the things that I would stress to everybody who's listening is, when you respond, check if you felt a rush to respond. If you are responding without even a hesitation or a breath, right? The truth is, it's likely your ego rushing to the answer. Someone tells you they have a problem and you immediately want to solve it. It's that feeling of self-importance to say, I'm going to rush and say what the solution is. But if instead you could put your ego to the side and ask more questions, presenting the solution will make a difference. I can't tell somebody right at the beginning who's worried about interest rates, did you know that you can buy it down? Did you know that new construction has these lower interest rates? Did you know that it's possible for us to find something where the seller might cover the cost, et cetera, et cetera? I can't go in solution mode. I have to say, okay, what sort of interest rate would you be comfortable at? All right, have you considered, what if we get a monthly payment that could offset that cost? Have you considered that? And have you spoke with anybody yet about what your options are? The more that I ask, the more willing they are to listen to the solution. But I cannot start with my ego rush to say, I have the solution, because people are still clammed up. They haven't walked through what the scenario and the steps could be. Were you interested in new construction? Have you looked at that before I go saying new construction is the solution?
100%. And what I want to say there too is for me over the years, look, I spoke in front of boards for years before I had my brokerage and stuff, and I was really nervous. And the thing that I really wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that my passion showed through, because I was always passionate about everything I did, everything I learned. I wanted to tell everybody. And this is where you need to put your passion in check and your ego in check, because passion and ego, in this case, I believe they're equal. Would you agree with that?
That's such a good way of looking at it. I think it could be both. Yeah, because our passion, I never thought of it that way, but I think you're right.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I've got so much passion in what I do and how I do it. And sometimes I come over very strongly, right? Like, for instance, I will tell you that when I had my brokerage, I had great technology from day one. I had a cloud before anybody knew what it was. And while our systems were great, my team would not allow me to teach the technology in my bit brokerage, because I knew it too well. And I wanted them to know it too well, that I sucked at teaching it because I was impatient, because that was my passion and my ego coming through. It says, why can't you learn this, right? So we all need to remember that I don't care how passionate you are, you need to just take a step back, take a deep breath. And you see this, you see this in groups too. Like, just an example, if you go to a very crowded zoning meeting or a town meeting, and there's so many people up in arms and stuff, and what they do is they come off so wrong because their passion and their anger for the prospect of the process is just, I mean, they just hate it. So they don't realize that maybe they should ask some questions as they move along, because as I do, what we're trying to do is get our relationship building or our relationshiping to be more of a self-discovery session with the people we're talking to, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And what you said there about getting that self-discovery side, I tell agents all the time, if you talk to a lead on the phone and you have collected their criteria and you've collected their timeline, which are the questions we're most comfortable with, you are the equivalent of a website online portal. They can check off all of those items. But if you don't capture the motivation, they have essentially not had a meaningful conversation with a human. It is the motivation that cannot be captured online. There is no section to say, and tell me why this matters to you. Of all of the reasons for you to make a move, what is it that has you looking in the first place? And we're not willing to ask those questions. We are so afraid of the discovery side of things that it prevents us from saying anything. We hope they'll volunteer it. But if you don't ask for that discovery, if you don't ask for the discovery, why would they be prompted to volunteer information, especially on y'all's cold calls, right? SOI leads are totally different. But when you're trying to connect with somebody who right now it's stranger danger at the beginning of the call, it's who is this person on the other side, right? There's a method to the madness. We ask criteria first because those are safe questions. Those are softballs to get somebody comfortable. And I ask, you answer. But we ask motivation because that self-discovery Sometimes they haven't even voiced it to themselves. And now they are saying it out loud, the reason that I want this thing. And now their vision gets bigger, gets more concrete. So you have to give them the space to do that.
Yeah, and what's important that what you just said was that they may not even know why they're moving or what they're moving. They just know they want to move. For me, just I like to use personal situations to try to work everything out in my head as I work with other agents. And it's funny, last May I said, we're not moving, we're staying here, we're not going anywhere. 2 weeks later, before we're supposed to go on a big trip, I said, you know what, we're getting the hell out of here. We're moving. Right? It was like, first it was this, and I could give you a lot of reasons at that point why. I don't know what happened, but it just happened, right? I can give you a lot of reasons why I wanted to move, and I knew why I wanted to move. But most people know they want to move because, maybe it's a job change, or maybe their family's growing, or maybe their family's getting smaller for, all that kind of things. They know, but the more that they articulate it, the better it is. And that's where our questions come in. That's where we have to ask questions rather than tell. I always said that if we're making a statement, it's about us, if we're asking questions about them, right? So I think that's really important too. One of the other things that you said, the two things I said I wanted to get to, was you said a 2-minute conversation. Okay. Why did you say 2 minutes? What's the significance there?
So right at that 2-minute mark, prior to that, if a call ends, it is typically because the lead has basically won the sale. And here's what I mean. One of you is selling somebody, right? I think most of
right.
They're either selling you it can't work, or you're selling them that it's possible and obtainable. And so typically prior to 2 minutes, you've definitely not collected all the information you've needed, but the lead has won. Now that means that typically the lead decided that the call was over. If you make it past 2 minutes, whether it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds or whether it's 13, right? That means that you are typically the one who actually decided when that conversation was over. So it's really the difference between who's in the driver's seat leading that conversation. I see sometimes that agents stop at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, right? But the lead was willing to answer. It's just the own nerves of the agent to say, well, they said they were busy at the beginning, but they never brought it up again. They went the whole rest of the conversation and answered everything you said and gave a little story as well. And you said, okay, thank you for your time. And they said, oh, okay. But that's that importance. Can you get them over 2 minutes, and can you maintain the relationship that you're building and ask the right questions?
Yeah. So with that 2 minutes and stuff, I mean, do you think when people are cutting off that call at 2 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever, you think they're surprised, or they just don't have the confidence to go further, or they just forget to ask for the appointment, or all of the above?
I think it's mostly a confidence thing. It's a series of rejection that we've already experienced, right? We're almost grateful that somebody stayed with us on the phone that long. And so for a lot of agents, and really just people, not even agents, but really just people in that moment, you're like, oh my God, I broke the cycle of rejection where people hung up or weren't talking to me. And now it's like, at least this call was nice. I don't want anything to interrupt it. And so we're almost protecting our ego sometimes, and we cut it short. And we say, okay, I'll send you listings. You let me know if you see anything, rather than continuing to really break through our own fear and say, I'm going to keep asking these hard questions, and then to continue.
So one of the things I've heard lately, I've heard it several times. I saw it on an IG post earlier today in a video. Like, you've got to ask at least 3 questions, or you've got to get shut down 3 times with 3 questions before you're willing to hang up the phone. Talk to me about that.
So I'll use the 3 questions in terms of motivation.
Sure.
This will be my main takeaway for anybody who's listening. But you can't exclusively say, what has you wanting to move? Especially in the form of people having answered criteria questions, you're on the left side of somebody's brain. They're still on the logic side of 3 beds, 2 baths, and things that they can check off that are simple. So when you say, what is it that has you wanting to move? You may still get a criteria answer. So we have to transition and kind of tap on the right side of their brain and say, now I need a creative response. So the first question that I always say is, okay, Dave, I haven't asked you the most important question yet. Of all of the reasons for you to make a move, what is it that has you looking in the first place? And by saying of all the reasons, that lets a lead know this is a multiple choice answer, right? And we tend to
Right.
get a why statement. From that question, this is the second one I would ask. I say, okay, Dave, after you've made this move, day in and day out, tell me, what's the vision? What does life look like? The third question that I ask is I say, and Dave, between life right now and after you've made this move, is there anything in life that you want to stay the same? And the fourth thing I ask is I say, okay, Dave, between life right now and after you've made this move, is there anything in life you want to be different? Now, with the right lead type, those four questions are naturally going to push you past 2 minutes, which we do need. We need 2 minutes minimum to uncover a quality, true motivation. With the wrong lead type, we will just be through all those questions in 30 seconds. And I have agents say, but Nikki, it was only 30 seconds. I asked all of the best questions. So here's the next level. This is my pro tip for y'all. If you have a lead who gives you a partial answer, for example, they say, I'm downsizing. Downsizing is not a motivation. It is the result. It is the outcome. They will be downsizing, but it doesn't tell us why. So at any time you take one word or a series of words they said to develop your next question. So, okay, Dave, why is it important to you to downsize? Well, we had our kids leave the house a couple of years ago. Oh, okay. And when they left, did they stay local or where did they go? The more that we ask, the more that we understand. You take words from their last thing to build your last question, because downsizing is a perfect example of us not asking to understand. We say downsizing, that's it. I got an answer. But is it mobility issues? They can't go up the stairs anymore? Is it that the property is huge and now they don't use the backyard anymore? Is it that their kids have left the home? What is the purpose? Their in-laws were living with them and now they've lost them. We don't know the answer. We cannot assume it. So we have to be willing to ask deeper. That's where people go through the emotional opening with you, and they don't want to do the labor over again with a new agent. They feel that you are the one who understood them. That's the power of uncovering the motivation by going a minimum of 3 deep, if not more.
So if everybody's watching this, I do this on every broadcast where there's something where I want you to rewind this and listen. I want you to go back to the last 20 seconds, because what Nikki just said was that when you open up the door to what their true feelings are, they don't want to reopen that door with somebody else because you've taken the time to get to their why. Okay, it's like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like the old going deep, right? With like, this was, I first read this in a book by Dean Graziosi. I think it's called The Millionaire Mindset, I think it is. And he was asked in that book by Joe Stumpf, one of my original coaches. He went 7 whys deep. Like, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do this? Keep going deep with that question. And it's not intrusive. It's actually, it is the definition really of self-discovery. And if you're able to do that, I believe that I never thought of it that way, Nikki, where they're not going to want to do that with anybody else because you've already done it. You've taken the time to get to know them, and you're in that. Now you're really, truly in rapport. You can make jokes. You can do anything you want. You can go forward with it. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I use this example a lot. Whenever you go to Olive Garden and they bring you the check, they have a little chocolate on top, right? And they put the chocolate because you are more likely to tip well. That's what studies have shown. Okay. That's the same thing when you collect motivation. They're more likely to say yes to your appointment, and they are more likely to actually attend. Because if somebody gets cold feet, what are you going to say? But I have all of your criteria. That's not enough to bring someone back in. But if you have their personal reason, there's no better sell to anybody than to say, I remember, Dave, this was important to you because of blank. Does that still matter? Is that still the goal? Now you have something to actually bring them back in.
Exactly. And it's all right. So it's really important that we build a relationship, stay in rapport, the whole thing. But you're going to ask questions, right? And I think there's a couple of different ways that these questions can be asked, and how we react is going to be key. And why I say that is, we talked about, okay, so they're thinking about the things like 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, or whatever it is. But if you ask people, where do you want to move to? Well, I want a really nice street. I want the house to be this, that, and the other thing. it's a different type of personality, right?
Mhm.
So when you notice the different types of personalities, is there a different approach? And is it something that you really have to study to understand all the different personalities and how you have to hit them?
Mhm. I know that most of the people listening have likely heard of the DISC profile, but I'm going to tell you the
Right.
quickest cheat codes to identifying them. Okay. Your D personalities that are dominant, they give short, matter of fact statements. That's what tends to happen. Very little, if any, storytelling. Your I personalities share stories. You have to match that energy by sharing stories as well. Oh, I helped somebody else in your scenario, right? Your D personalities, you can't afford to waste the time with a story. You have to match with the short statements. Now, your S and your C personalities can be harder to identify, but here's what we know. Your S personalities are stable. They require trust, which means for most of those leads, they are not going to be converted on the first call. You will need to continue and continue and continue to follow up. And that's how they will build that sense of security. Your C personalities need numbers. These are people who actually address and ask and say, I saw this in the market and I know this number and this statistic. That means you have to be able to equally match with information with information. If I start giving numbers to a D personality, that will not make a difference. And if I start saying something about, okay, well, this story with an S, okay, well, my S isn't going to be convinced on a story, but it's starting to build the cycle. So once you can identify, that's where we start to adapt. What is it that this personality needs? Because the best agents, they don't only work with their personality type, they're able to understand and to work with different types of people.
Okay. So there's the D, which is going to be very short based responses. Are those short responses like, okay, so they're short responses, and you have to really build and you have to dig. And when I say dig, I don't mean in an egocentric way. I mean you need to dig and to ask better questions so you get better answers. Is that correct?
Agreed. Completely.
Okay. So are you going to be talking to? Okay, so you got a D, right? And so a D is every D, or is everybody you talk to that says I don't want to pay a commission or I don't want to work with an agent, you're not really getting a sense of who they really are. Is that correct? I mean, is there different ways to figure out who they are and what they are, and what is there a question to ask and determine the response? Because if they say I just don't want to pay a commission, that could be everybody. Is that correct?
Yeah, anybody can say they don't want to pay commission, right? But it's also a
Right.
matter, it is partially a matter of how they say it. If somebody says, I'm not paying commission, right? I'm going to identify that as a D personality type. But if somebody says, we don't want to pay commission, okay, we includes there's another decision maker. I'll make a note of that. But now I'm going to be listening to the harmony. If they say, oh, we don't want to pay a commission, okay, well, there might be a little more to something like that. And I'm trying to listen. Do they say, we don't want to pay commission because with our last realtor, now that's a storyteller. Okay, that's somebody who's going to give me an explanation. So we're
Right.
listening for the most subtle of differences to try to figure out, do they say, we don't want to pay commission because, and they give numbers as a reason? They say, we're going to need to net XYZ. Okay, that's probably my C personality type. So that's where we're listening for differences to see, what is it that you need? Because if you listen carefully, most people tell you how they need to be sold.
Okay, great. How important is your understanding of what we just talked about?
I would say that it's the difference between the number of people that y'all will be able to reach. It was the number of how I was able to reach. When I started, I could only talk to bubbly I personality types. If they were a storyteller, I was closing that lead. And that's all I knew how to do. And I had to adjust. I had to learn, because in lead generation, I'm not only listening for me, I'm listening to give it to another agent. And I need to understand what your needs are in order to put you with an agent that you're going to love. And so I had to continue to readjust and to learn different personality types and to find that there's strength in all of us. And I say the strength part because this is not a choice where somebody buys a home in one day. There's so many opportunities for them to get out. So that strength part is the resilience to continue in a process that is lengthy, right? That is for most people the largest transactions they have of their entire life. Well, now that I understand what different needs look like and how they might communicate those needs, that helped to get them with somebody who is going to be able to match for them as well.
Okay, so we're talking about always being rapport building. We talked about different ways that people are going to respond to us and how we have to adjust to that. Mm-hmm. So I briefly asked you a question the other day when we spoke, and it had to do with the United States of America, the country, North America, right? You work with 80 teams throughout North America, and they're all in different areas. I mean, you don't have everybody in South Carolina. You don't have everybody in California. And you don't have everybody in the Northeast. And one of my pet peeves when I talk to marketing people is, tell me about your success in the New York metropolitan area. Tell me about your success in the Northeast. Because I know that we tend to be, I'm in New Jersey, northern New Jersey. I know that we tend to be arrogant, more cynical. Tell me about if you think that's true, number one. And number two, how do we deal with different, is it different locations? Is it different attitudes, or is it just simple as mirror and matching?
Mm-hmm. So the example I'll give is this. First of all, yes, we know there's different personality types everywhere, no doubt about it. But there are certainly cultural nuances depending on certain areas. Here's the example that I always give. Whenever I was in Texas, in San Antonio, where I started doing this, I would ask my leads, I'd say, hey, Dave, this is Nikki out in San Antonio. I've been sending you listings. Have you gotten them? And that worked for me at the time. When I moved to Myrtle Beach, I had people who were frustrated and mad from the introduction and said, I just found out that I lost my da-da-da. I just found out that I have health issues. I'm not going in. And there was so much grief. The average age in Myrtle Beach is 62. And so I realized that for my area, I couldn't just start with my own, pitch, right? And it changed. And I started saying, hey, Dave, this is Nikki out in Myrtle Beach. How's it going? Because if somebody said I've been better, I had a better chance to convert them. I would stop and I'd say, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then if somebody said I'm going through a divorce or I've lost somebody, etc., well, now I present them with an option. And that's the only time that I present the option. I normally just persevere, but I'd say, okay, Dave, well, I tell you what, if you don't want to talk about real estate right now, I 100% understand. And if you do, this is something that I can take off your plate. So you tell me what would make more sense right now. Now, that's more of the hospitality side of things, right? Hospitality tends to flow throughout the Bible Belt, but those sorts of statements might not be as effective in a culture where people don't want to waste time, right? I probably won't use that, how are you, if I'm talking to somebody in New Jersey or New York, right? Because it's like, what do you care? Okay, well then I would recommend that you try different intros according to your area, but there are subtle nuances. But nonetheless, that mirror and matching is the main thing that's going to surpass. If you can sense somebody's energy from the beginning and be willing to shift, that will overcome.
So you hit one of my questions that I was going to ask you without even asking, which is really cool. It's always the thing about saying, hey, this is Dave with Airline Group with eXp Realty. How are you doing today? Does it make sense that we say, how are you? Do people care if you ask them, how are you? Because I've heard from many coaches, some will say, don't say, how are you? And because they really don't give a shit. And some will say, how are you? So where do we draw the line? Because we don't know. That's how we're starting the conversation. That's how we know what to do, because it's also a nerve thing in us and a fear thing in us. That's the way we start a conversation. What are your thoughts on that?
Here's my input. I've heard plenty of coaches say, don't say it. What I have found is that by saying that, number one, it requires the lead to respond earlier in the conversation. It's a couple of words. If I have too long of an intro, click, because they never even had the chance to speak. This is Nikki out in Myrtle Beach with so-and-so team. I've been sending you listings and I'm double checking to see, okay, if I don't give any break, there's a chance that our relationship breaks. Here's the second part to that. I called the grocery store line result. Every time you go through a grocery store line, even if you're not in the mood, if the person says, how are you? You naturally reply very quickly. You say, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm whatever. It's the same thing on a phone call with a stranger. Most people, and I tell people all the time, if you think it doesn't work, just test it. Just try it on the phone for your next 20 calls and let me know, did people answer you or did they hang up? Because people don't hang up when you ask, how are you? And our goal is to extend our talk time with them. So I really stress, try that, how are you? Give them the opportunity, but you have to be ready and willing to bend with what they say. If you cannot handle somebody telling you, I've had better days, okay, then that means you're not in the position to ask the how are you question. But I would always say it's better to mention it and then to continue. But for each their own. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I would definitely say I lean on the how are you side.
So you lean on the how are you side, because that's really good, because I always hear it and I'm saying, I've got this like these two coaches at me saying, don't say it, say it, don't say it, say it. It's like, because I know up here, I mean, if you say, hey, how you doing? I'm good. What do you want?
Yes.
It's like, it's that kind of thing, right? Because basically when you say, how are you? They know you don't give a shit anyway. I mean, let's face it. I mean, up here when, like I'll go, for me, I'm a little different. I say, good morning. How you doing? So I'm okay. He says, how are you? So I'm doing great. It's been a great morning so far. How about you?
Mm-hmm.
And so that changes their tone a little bit. And I can get my goal is to just be me. Right. And if that's who you are with the passion in your conversation, that you want to talk to people and you want to make people feel good, then great. But I think it's difficult when you're nervous about it and there's fear involved, because let's face it, this thing, as my buddy John tells me, it's 700 pounds. It's hard to pick up sometimes, but we have to do it. And everybody knows the process when you're brand new. It's 700 pounds. You finally lift it up. Then you dial the number and you hear the ringing, and you're saying to yourself, voicemail, please, voicemail. So, I mean, that's how it always happens, right? And people laugh when I say that, but you know what? It's freaking true, right? Anyway, so guys, everybody needs to understand that all the stuff that we went through, I hope has helped you, right? But I've got a couple of more things I want to ask you about. And the hardest part for most, as I've just talked about, the how are you, right, is what I call the opener. Okay. So if it's for sale by owners or expires or whoever it is there a quick opener? Because if you start saying, hey, I've been sending you stuff, have you gotten it? Did you see this one? You're done, right? So most of the time. Is there a best opener that you would suggest that agent use for calling potential sellers or buyers?
So here are my introduction options that I would offer to y'all. Okay. The first thing is this: if it is a buy lead, and even if it's a sell lead, okay, I always treat them with a buyer introduction. All right. And there are two choices. The first one is that I say, hey, Dave, this is Nikki out in Myrtle Beach. How's it going? And Dave answers. And if he asks, how are you back? I'm already off to a great start. I say, I'm so good. Thank you for asking. I'm double checking to see. I'm the one that's been sending you listings. Are you still looking? Here's what the perks of that are. Number one, we're not telling the lead what they're doing. That's where we get into mistakes. We say things like, Dave, you registered, you clicked on, and we can get in a fight 10 seconds in the call. And they say, no, I didn't. And we say, no, but you did. And we've already broken rapport. So we're always going to claim ownership. That's the first step. I have done this thing. The second thing that's going to surprise you about that is a lot of people respond with familiarity. They say, oh, okay. Even if you yourself haven't sent it, a lot of us in our CRM have automations. So it's a safe bet. They are getting something from somebody, likely your team as well, but always best they think it's you. Okay. The second introduction that I would say is with Dave. I would say, hey, Dave, I've been periodically checking in with you. Last we talked, it seemed like things were at a bit of a pause. How are things looking as of now? That is safe for any lead that's been in your database, even more than a couple of days. Okay. Because the truth is, for most leads, they're looking 6 months to a year in advance on the online sites before they ever get to any sort of action phase. And
Right.
we love hot leads, but leads actually need time to mature in your database. That's a safe bet, because even if you haven't, it is almost 100% guaranteed that they were at a pause for some time. And we're establishing that level of familiarity again to say, last we spoke. And the worst I've ever gotten is somebody says, oh, I don't remember that. And I say, I understand. I'm sure that you've gotten calls from plenty of realtors in the meantime. Tell me this, is moving still on your radar? How's it looking? And we pivot right past that. So those are my 2 introductions I would encourage us to use for buy or sell. Here's the reason I also encourage it for sell. Selling, for most people, that is the result, right? They have to sell to get to the next place. So if I can get them in the buy side of the conversation first, or if they volunteer to me, oh, we're not staying, we're actually moving to so-and-so, that changes the nature of the conversation because they've told me. If I go through criteria and then I say, and do you need to sell property in order to make this move? They've volunteered that. Volunteering takes some of the edge off. Otherwise, we can have commission breath by saying, are you looking to sell your home? That's already a buzzword. It's already a stranger danger because we're saying sell. So I encourage us to start on the buy side regardless. We can pivot in the conversation as needed. Now, if you really, really want to address, let's say you got a home valuation request, okay, or cash offer request for a seller, then I say this, hey, Dave, this is Nikki out in Myrtle Beach. I sent you a home valuation and I'm double checking. I thought those numbers might be a little low. Did you get a chance to see it? And people love hearing that, oh, you thought they were low? And then most people, if they did look at it, they're going to tell you the same thing. They're going to say, I thought that it was also low. And then you say, yeah, I'm realizing that's happening a lot. That's why I'm making these calls. Tell me, I want to make sure you have an accurate number, even if it's just for curiosity. Have you made any changes that could potentially increase or even impact the overall value of the property? Now we're talking about their home. And how long ago did you move there? What brought you out here? We're building rapport. That method is just an easier transition. Okay. Now with your for sale by owners, this was my intro every time. I'd say, hey, Dave, this is Nikki out in Myrtle Beach. It looks like you're selling 123 Main Street. Is that right? And the answer should always be yes. Okay, perfect. I am doing research. I have a client who's coming in town this weekend. It looks like this might be one of the places that we should take a look at, and I'm previewing properties for them. Is there any chance that I could stop by later this afternoon to take a look? And for most people, the answer is yes. Great. If they say, oh, well, can't you just bring your client? I say, yeah, my client only has a little bit of time, which is why we're previewing. I need to make sure we have the best choices. Is there any chance that I could come by later today? Remember this, most for sale by owner properties are listed within 6 weeks. And do you know who is most likely to be the person, the one that they met belly to belly with? Even if you don't convert them that time, when things start to not go as expected, you are the contact and the only agent that is met. It's more important for you to get in front of them. That puts you light years ahead of every agent who's just calling, trying to convince them, why do you want to be without an agent? And tell me, okay, what if I can do, right? So that's that's my suggestions for all leads.
So I've got to hit you with this question, right? Because this is something that I've always stayed away from, and saying that you have someone that wants to see the house. Because what I always figured, Nikki, was that put you in the friend zone. And what I mean by that is, I always explain it this way: is you ever in school and whatever, and you wanted to date somebody, or you saw somebody you wanted to date, but they were a friend of a friend, and you were their friend, and they confided in you and stuff, and you could never ask them out, right? So you were in the friend zone. My thought process always has been that if you say, I have a buyer, and you don't, or whatever, now you're stuck in the friend zone. Do you have the right to go to that listing conversation? Do you have the right, but not at that point? Talk to me about that, because that's one thing that I've always thought about and talked about a lot. So help me with that.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I will say is this: I don't recommend that particular pitch for any other type. I don't do that for withdrawals. I don't do that for expireds. I treat those conversations from the intros we already discussed. Okay. Awesome. specifically for FSBOs, knowing that those are so difficult to convert, this is the only instance I would recommend this thing, because the power of you getting to their house supersedes all else. But I agree, that's not our best pitch every time. That's exclusively for the value of getting in front of a for sale by owner who's likely going to choose an agent within a couple of weeks anyway.
Fantastic. You know, there's sometimes when I do these broadcasts, I think, okay, so I'm at 20 minutes, I'm at 30 minutes, but this is just like, this has been fantastic, and thank you so much. And there's a couple of things I want to ask you. Now, you work with team leaders and agents throughout the country, but you also do something on your own with one-on-one coaching for team leaders and agents. Talk to me about that process and how people can get in touch with you for that.
So those of you who know the Shep Black community, it's a Shep Black offering. So if you decide that you want one-on-one coaching for your particular self, for your best agent on your team, for a one-on-one, that's available. But additionally, if you know this is something I think my team needs to spend time with, our team should be benefiting from auditing databases, from listening to the language of sales, how to set appointments, and uncovering what these leads need, because I'm paying thousands of dollars for online lead sources. We need to close them. Then that might be the best offering for you. But keep in mind, that is something that is available through the Shep Black community.
Okay, great. And your contact information is on the screen now with your Instagram and your stuff scrolling on the bottom. You know, I missed something in the very beginning, Nikki, that I have to ask you. It's something I ask everybody at the start of every broadcast, and please forgive me for not asking this, but I have to ask this question. Do you know what TGIF stands for?
I think I do, but I'm nervous now. Is it Thank God It's Friday?
Well, that's usually what most people think, but
Okay.
for this purpose, it's Thank God It's Finale. So I just wanted to let you know, and I always ask that question, and I forgot to ask that in the beginning, and I was like saying, damn, I forgot to do my opening. That's like my opening all the time. Anyway, so Nikki, I want to thank you so much for being on today. This has been, you know, really, really interesting for us, because people are really, the real estate industry, most of us don't know how to talk, right? We know how to talk and make friends and everything else, but once we get that sales thing on our plate, we don't know what to do. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. There's just two more things that I want to ask. One is, first of all, I'll go any further. Next week, we have founder and head coach of Push Coaching coming on. His name is David Radney. He is a New Jersey guy. I can't wait to have him on. He's a Keller Williams guy. I just can't wait to have David on. He's fantastic. We're going to love him next week. So that's next week. But here are two other things. Number one, Nikki, how do I help you grow your business?
Oh my goodness. I think you having me on here was sensational, Dave. I'm really grateful that you gave me the opportunity to share this information with people. But truly just the opportunity to talk with you was very enjoyable. I don't think I could ask for anything else.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad you were on. So glad you had a good time. And of course, let's not forget the hat. So everybody gets one. I mean, Travis may have his. I don't know if he ever got it, but it was sent to him. Shep Black's got a couple. But I want to thank you so much for coming on. If you stay on just for a minute afterwards, I know you got to run. Thank you, everybody. Next week, we got David Radney. It's going to be fun. Have a great week. Remember, we're in March. Go out there, make those calls, and get those deals. Day finale here. We'll see you next week. Hit it, Nelson.